It is a very big day. Unlike almost any other event in the digital media industry, the IAB Annual Leadership Meeting is explicitly about conversation, so that's why you want to be here. It's because it's not me and our staff who are doing the work, it's all of you and the thousands of other IAB member company executives who participate in our committees and councils, who write the standards, who agree on the best practices, answer our research questions. It's your ideas and your needs and your priorities. They are the IAB agenda. We had a fascinating conversation in this room last night. It began on stage, as you know, with Mark Pritchard's call to action on industry standards. It continued with Shailesh and Emilio from the Washington Post and Emily from Columbia Journalism School exploring the new publisher platform landscape in incredible detail, I thought. It was just a rich half hour. And then it concluded with the town hall of the whole, led by Andrew Hayward. The conversation last night generated a lot of buzz. I was out at the party afterwards, and people were talking quite a lot about viewability and measurement. We had our roving reporter actually capturing your comments afterwards. Here's what you were saying about the issues.
The ads were fine when they played on TV, but then when they got to the internet, now we have penalties and fees out the wazoo.
The client's gonna have a conniption.
That's why you're bringing them into the big meeting.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Hey, that's not fair. Am I dreaming?
On the advertising side, the digital advertising side, I would definitely say attribution.
I think I want to have more fun. I think we should all have more fun.
Yeah, going to continue my journey of trying to be a post-40s CrossFit devotee. As you could tell, that's early stages as well.
Remind us that we are stronger together to make America great again, to make our industry great again. We're going to actually do more by working together than at odds.
Personally, I want to wear less blazer and jeans combinations. And professionally, I'm hoping that data and creative can come together to tell better stories.
Open borders and tolerance. Anybody have a problem with that?
So in 2017, I want to learn how to drink tequila.
Personal health.
Personal health, amen. And cut.
The biggest news from Sunday night was when Mark Pritchard comes out on stage and demands that his agency partners and his media partners step up and comply with MRC accreditation, third-party verification, and transparent contracts.
Fake news has become a buzzword, but the real issue is a credibility crisis affecting all media, not just journalism, in a very polarized nation.
To be successful as a publisher, you have to marry great technology with great journalism. That enables you to have the size of audience you need to be able to compete in these very, very difficult times and to be able to tell the types of stories that we all need to tell.
Of course they are.
Absolutely. Both spots are still alive and well in different environments. The storytelling is going to be the art.
So I think the 15 and the 30 will evolve. As the ecosystem for video continues to evolve, they'll remain, but other alternatives will also emerge.
I think that it's going to live longer than anything else on Earth.
So I think yes, for a couple of reasons. It takes a bunch of time to turn a ship around, and 15 and 30 seconds at that length because they work.
It's alive, but I don't know if I would say it's well. There's other formats that you could use that are shorter and more authentic and more integrated that could probably have better impact.
The 15 and 30 second spot is still the most popular length in video, but we heard from Mark Pritchard today that he's going to try to tell his story in 3 seconds.
Thanks to Extreme Reach for sponsoring that video. We're going to have more videos along the way, so if the roving reporter sticks a microphone and a camera in your face, please talk. As I said last night, the annual leadership meeting is designed for leaders of the industry. That's all of you here in this room, to define the agenda for our industry. Our town halls later today will call on each and every one of you to collaborate to help the IAB team determine our priorities during the coming year in 5 areas that our board has deemed critical to the growth and success of the digital media industry. Those town hall topics are attribution and identity, user experience, the convergence of digital video and television, strategies for cross-platform monetization, and the future of header bidding. So please, please, please participate in those town halls, because the results you'll see over the coming year. Please refer to the conference app for additional details on these forums. We really encourage you to attend. We'll also have mic runners throughout the room for you to ask questions of our presenters today, time permitting. Again, all about the conversation. Some news. We already know that better reporting, better measurement, and attribution are top industry focuses for this year. The IAB Data Center of Excellence is releasing today our 2nd annual benchmark report in conjunction with Winterberry Group. The report reveals that 71% of marketers, media buyers, publishers, and technology executives are expecting to increase their spending on data this year. That report is titled The Outlook for Data 2017, a snapshot into the evolving role of audience insight. Its results were based on an online survey of members of the IAB Data and Programmatic Councils. The full report is available at IAB.com, Data Outlook 2017. You'll also find on your seats 2 industry insights reports. The first, from Integral Ad Science, delves into the market challenges of measuring viewability in-app and the advantages of open sourcing for the industry. The second report is the Nielsen Total Audience Report, which looks at cross-platform media behavior across screens, devices, and platforms. You can download these reports via the IAB mobile app. Finally, and very importantly, I want to let you all know that IAB is conducting our annual survey of our members, which will build on the board of director interviews and other member input we receive throughout the year. It's to gain additional data on member knowledge and awareness. It's incredibly important for your voice to be heard, your opinions and your thoughts about the IAB and our work. We encourage everyone in our member organizations to take the time to complete the test honestly. We'll leverage this 27 survey to set benchmarks that we can use to better understand our members' perceptions. And the data we gather will inform IAB leadership and staff to help shape not just our strategic objectives, but our operations. It's really going to help us serve you better. We'll be sending out the surveys immediately after the annual leadership meeting, and we'll keep it open for several weeks. So please look out for it. It's important to us. Before we dive in, I want to thank our sponsors again, sponsors we can't do this conference without. A huge thank you to AppNexus, the principal sponsor of this year's IAB Annual Leadership Meeting. Our platinum sponsor, Media.net. Our premier sponsors, Google, SpotX, and Teads. And our title sponsors, AOL, Beachfront, C1X, ComScore, Digital Remedy, Index Exchange, Interactive, OpenX, Optimatic, Oracle, Data Cloud, and Smato. And our VIP sponsors, supporting sponsors, and media partner, all listed behind me. Thank you all so much for your support. We truly want this event to be as interactive as possible. We want you to be engaged and to be active on social media. Here is how you can do that. We also have Wi-Fi available in the room. Here's how you can get on and use it. Encourage you to download our app, which has a lot of essential information and any updates. And of course, please make use of our attendee lounge, courtesy of Nativo. And final little housekeeping note for today, we have a very special raffle for a Villy custom bike, courtesy of Gum Gum. This is a really hot bike. I am so sorry I am not eligible for this raffle. We'll be announcing the winner, who will definitely not be me, after lunch. So be sure to enter before we reconvene this afternoon. And now, let's get on with the program for today. I'd like to talk to you about something very real, very near and dear to me and very important. What we say here and what we do here in this room at this conference makes a difference. Like Jim Norton, I think, noted last night that it was at our very first IAB Annual Leadership Meeting that our then board chair, Wenda Harris-Millard, made her famous pronouncement, "We must not trade our advertising inventory like pork bellies." And that crystallized a debate about media commoditization and value that rings through everything this industry does to this day. It was at our 6th IAB Annual Leadership Meeting that a group of 60 industry executives, led by Distillery's Tom Phillips and John Battelle of Federated Media, gathered for an unplanned summit meeting on fraudulent non-human traffic. These IAB members forced the industry for the first time to pay attention to the criminal corruption that had crept into the center of our distribution system. From that meeting came TAG, the Trustworthy Accountability Group, the industry-wide self-regulatory program for supply chain safety. That's the same TAG that Mark Pritchard said Procter is now requiring all its media vendors and technology suppliers to join. Last year, at our 9th Annual Leadership Meeting, I told you why I hate the ad block profiteers. And I described them, and I'll quote it again, as an old-fashioned extortion racket. I also explained how the industry, this industry, people in this room, bore responsibility for their rise because we failed to put our users on a pedestal. From that ALM came the Coalition for Better Advertising and its forthcoming standards for user experience based on the IAB Lean principles. You'll hear more about that later today. And from that meeting as well came unified industry action against ad block profiteers that has rendered them toothless. Indeed, the threat of network-level ad blocking, a real critical concern exactly 1 year ago, has virtually disappeared thanks to international IAB member company action. These and other challenges we have addressed at this gathering have one thing in common. They represent the necessity of collective action across many companies in a complex industry and across many parts of individual companies within our industry to avert, relieve, and resolve problems before they become crises. But even more fundamentally, these issues we have discussed, debated, and confronted at these leadership meetings represent the commitment of men and women in the digital media industry to act, not just in their own self-interest, but on behalf of others, colleagues and competitors alike. We repeatedly and continually have come together as a community to make this village we call digital advertising a better place. I'm very proud of the ways we, the IAB community, have united to craft meaningful remedies to industry challenges. When the federal government threatened to regulate us because they worried we would misuse consumers' web data, together we created the Digital Advertising Alliance and its groundbreaking Your Ad Choices self-regulatory program to enable consumers control over their data. When digital video advertising delivery looked like it would veer into a chaotic jumble of competing standards, together we crafted the IAB VAST specification for serving video ads consistently to different digital ad players. When digital immigrants started flooding into our sales force from other media, we created, and you backed, the IAB Training and Certification Program. That program today has graduated more than 10,000 digital sellers. More than 7,000 of them have become certified in just the past 4 years. I'm invoking our history of consensus problem solving because today, at our 10th IAB Annual Leadership Meeting, we face a challenge that has boiled over into crisis. Perhaps the greatest crisis it is possible for this industry to face. For it is a crisis not of our industry, not of our digital media and marketing village, but a crisis of the society of which we are a part. Our industry is at the center of an epochal change in the way citizens perceive and participate in the world around them. Much of what our IAB community has done is undeniably beneficial. We have given voice to the voiceless, enabled people to pursue passions across borders, helped young men and women to cure sometimes crippling social isolation by allowing them to find others just like themselves, a town away or a world away. Out of bits and bytes, billions of dollars of value and millions of jobs have been created, and they flowed from boom towns like Palo Alto and Seattle into mom and pop enterprises in small hamlets on every continent. The technology we steward has given the powerless access to tools, the curious a route to knowledge, the friendless a path to love. Of this, we should all be proud. But we cannot deny that some of what we have brought into existence has had dire consequences. We know that networks we operate can be used to distribute stolen content, depriving the creators of journalism and entertainment of their ability to earn a living. We have learned that a set of technologies meant to decentralize access to information distribution can, in fact, be used by institutions and governments to centralize and block access to news. We have discovered that the same paths the curious can trek to satisfy their hunger for knowledge can also be littered deliberately with ripe falsehoods, ready to be plucked by and to poison the guileless. We have confronted, especially in this past year, especially in these past few weeks, the terrifying realization that facts and truth and the time-honored processes for establishing facts and truth can be turned into relativistic commodities, undermining the will of our citizenry and the ability of our leaders to make the world a better place. As an industry, it is our obligation to again step up. But this time, our goal cannot be merely to fix our supply chain. Our objective is not to preserve marketing and advertising. When all information becomes suspect, when it's not just an ad impression that may be fraudulent, but the data, the news, and even the science that undergirds society itself, then we must take responsibility as an industry for our effect on the world. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, whoa, Randall, I did not sign up for that. You're thinking that your obligation, the obligation that brought you here to the IAB Annual Leadership Meeting in Hollywood, Florida, is simply and straightforwardly to help your company. You came here to buy and to sell. You came here to learn about new products and services that might improve your business. You came here, certainly, to glean essential tidbits of news and gossip that might give you a leg up in your next client call. You're not shirking your larger responsibilities, your responsibilities to your family, to the town you live in, the country in which you live. But you're thinking, probably, that these are private matters and they don't intersect with your business obligations. I think that's what you're thinking. In the brief time I have, I hope to explain, however imperfectly, why your business obligations do intersect with your broader obligations as citizens. And I also hope to provide some small principles that may help you navigate the terrain between your professional responsibility and your civic responsibility. First, let me dispense with the fantasy that your obligation to your company stops at the door of your company. For any enterprise that has both customers and suppliers, which is to say every enterprise, is a part of a supply chain. And in any supply chain, especially one as complex as ours in the digital media industry, everything is interdependent. Everything touches something else, which touches someone else, which eventually touches everyone else. No matter how technical your company, no matter how abstruse your particular position and the skill it takes to occupy it, you cannot divorce what you do from the effects on the human beings who lie inevitably at the end of this industry's supply chain. What I'm saying is there's really no such thing anymore as a B2B problem. Everything is B2C. Everything we do ends up touching men, women, and children. Look at this concretely. In our industry, as in many others, technologists and engineers design and build things that salespeople sell to buyers. In our industry, these technology products and processes range across disciplines. They include new ad formats, new multimedia concepts, new ways of identifying audiences, new methods for measurement, new kinds of analytics, new ways to bid, new ways to transact in other ways. But no matter what they are, these products and services always by definition, influence the distribution of content. For the internet exists to move content, whether it's a mote of data or a 4 gigabyte movie, from servers to a requesting client. So directly or indirectly, all the engineers and all the sellers and all the buyers are influencing what content creators are able to create, which in turn affects what human beings are able to see, read, hear, and understand. They and you are also determining the things human beings give back into that chain. The data about their activities, their interests, their beliefs, their hopes, and their desires. And this feedback loop, in turn, affects not just the types of marketing communications that can be deployed to shape consumer attitudes and behaviors. It determines the actual goods and services that get produced. From music to detergent to short-term home rentals. It's a butterfly effect. And in this very truncated butterfly effect that I've just described, the line of code written by a junior programmer in a mobile advertising startup in Cupertino is determining the length of future novels, the attention span of future consumers, and the cultural heritage of a generation of kids coming of age in a village in rural India. In other words, there is no such thing as a neutral technology. Everything has consequences. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be able to predict most of those consequences. And you certainly shouldn't be held accountable for all of them. But you have no choice but to accept that what you do matters. And once you accept that, once you accept that by engineering something, by selling it, by buying it, by deploying it, by working with it, that each of us in some small way is responsible for it, then you must accept that you are also responsible for every human and every human institution that depends on it. As the story of Genesis reminds us, in business, as in life, you are your brother's keeper. This leads to the second reason your business obligations overlap your civic responsibility. Citizenship enabled through industry is as old as the American experiment, even older. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, a wonderful site, a wonderful stretch of books, reminds us that the nation state is not the only community in which we historically have seen ourselves as citizens. We also consider ourselves citizens of local geographic communities, of organizations, movements, loosely defined groups, even the world as a whole. All these communities are paving stones to progress, leading us toward a society that improves the lives of its people. I was a classics major and a philosophy major in college, so I'm always reminded of these bigger issues. John Stuart Mill wrote that men of virtuous character acting in and through justly administered institutions will stabilize and perpetuate the good society. But Mill also warned us. If the agents, or those who choose the agents, or those to whom the agents are responsible, or the lookers-on whose opinion ought to influence and check all these, if they are mere masses of ignorance, stupidity, and baleful prejudice, every operation of government will go wrong. Now, if this is sounding like far too much responsibility for any individual, let alone an individual sales leader, or ad operations leader, or agency buyer, or CMO, with your 24/7 jobs, take heart. Trade associations like IAB exist to advance the interests of the good society on your behalf. And trade associations like IAB are not a new thing. 300 years ago, Alexis de Tocqueville observed that among the unique features of the infant United States was the, I'm quoting, the immense assemblage of associations in that country. By Tocqueville's calculation, these associations were absolutely necessary. Among democratic nations, he wrote, all the citizens are independent and feeble. They can hardly do anything by themselves. They all, therefore, become powerless if they do not learn voluntarily to help one another. He went on, if they never acquired the habit of forming associations in ordinary life, civilization itself would be endangered and would soon relapse into barbarism. That relapse into barbarism is more commonly known, and I know you've heard this phrase, more commonly known as the tragedy of the commons. That concept was first advanced in 1833 by an English economist. Tragedy of the commons argues that in any interdependent ecosystem, if the participants act solely in their own self-interest, they ultimately will deplete the shared resources on which all depend, eventually leading to everyone's own degradation and demise. We have a commons. Our commons is the digital marketing and media supply chain. It is the grazing land on which we all feed, the central park that invigorates our spirits, the town square we depend on for our news, and the main street to which we travel to do business with each other. Without it, we are nothing. We are nothing as an industry, but as I've been arguing, we're also nothing as a people. So we have the requirement to act, and through our collaboration with each other, via associations like the IAB, we have the means to act. And this brings me to another topic that came up a lot last night. It brings me to fake news. There's a linear connection between fake news and those other trolls of digital marketing and media. Click fraud, fraudulent non-human traffic and bots, consumer data breaches, privacy violations, and the sources of ad blocking. Each one of them represents the failure of our supply chain, the same kind of supply chain failure we at IAB and our members have dealt with repeatedly and, for the most part, successfully over the years. Fake news carries the same cost to your company that these other supply chain failures carry. It reminds our customers that there's something untrustworthy, possibly even unsavory, in all this complexity underlying digital media. But fake news is much more than a supply chain failure. It represents a moral failure as well, one that implicates marketers, agencies, publishers, platforms, and technology companies alike. Consider the dissection of fake news reported, I think it was about a week ago, by Scott Shane in the New York Times. In a brilliant article, the title was From Headline to Photograph, a Fake News Masterpiece. You should look it up and you should read it. Scott Shane details how a 23-year-old recent college graduate in Maryland manufactured an entirely false story about the discovery, and I'm quoting from that story, the discovery of tens of thousands of fraudulent Clinton votes found in an Ohio warehouse. Shane also writes about how that fake story influenced perhaps millions of voters around the country. Everything in the story of the so-called fraudulent votes was a lie, made up out of whole cloth by a former fraternity leader and college quarterback named Cameron Harris. Sitting in his home in Maryland, Cameron Harris made up the Columbus, Ohio area electrical worker who allegedly found the fraudulent ballots. From a Google image search, he found a photograph of a man in a warehouse to illustrate the story. No matter that the photo was from Birmingham, England, He falsely captioned it as evidence of the shocking Ohio discovery. Harris published his tall tale on ChristianTimesNewspaper.com, a fake news site whose URL he had purchased for $5 from a URL clearinghouse. Within a few days, the entirely made-up story was shared with 6 million people via Twitter, Facebook, and other platforms. Mr. Harris made $5,000 in advertising revenue from the fabricated story. He calculated for the Times reporter that for his labor, the fake piece on the fake site about the fake ballots earned him about $1,000 an hour. Not a bad take. 3 years ago, in my address to this convention, I talked about this sort of supply chain failure, specifically in the context of digital ad fraud. I'm going to do the unpardonable sin of quoting myself, because I want to tell you exactly what we were thinking then, the warnings we were talking about then. What would happen, I asked, if any rubber manufacturer anywhere, no matter how new or unqualified, could at will inject its tires onto the assembly line on which Chrysler makes its cars? Almost immediately, the result would be a lot of dead and injured motorists as defective tires started shredding and blowing up on the world's highways. I said then that an analogous scenario threatens the internet. The supply chain by which advertising is created, delivered, measured, and optimized is so porous and perilous, I said, that it jeopardizes consumer trust and business growth. Fake news represents this exact form of supply chain failure. As the child of clickbait and the grandchild of the direct mail scams pioneered in the 1920s, fake news is also another form of hucksterism. The hucksterism with which the ad industry has been associated since its origins in the 19th century. The shocking headlines, the wild overpromise and underdelivery, the Barnum-esque mendacity. But it's much, much worse than that, because the object of hucksterism is to fool you into buying something. From that, you will recover. The object of fake news is to fool you into cynicism, mistrust, and even hatred. From that, our society cannot recover. As leaders of our ecosystem, all of you, as senior executives in brands, agencies, tech companies, platforms, and publishers, you have a responsibility for keeping our commons safe, secure, and flourishing. If you do not seek to address fake news and the systems, processes, technologies, transactions, and relationships that allow it to flourish, then you are consciously abdicating responsibility for its outcome. And that is the depletion of the truth and trust that undergird democratic capitalism. There is no one culprit in this ugly scenario. All of us in this room play a role. The marketers pressing for billions of additional impressions at unsustainably low prices. The agencies that then pressure publishers for more and more free added values. The publishers so desperate for revenue that they run ads disguised as news and source audience extensions on unsavory sites. The tech companies whose algorithms drive consumers to deceitful content. The journalists who complain but remain in their silos, unwilling to understand, let alone participate in correcting their industry. To all of them, to all of you, to all of us, I say, you wouldn't want your daughter to ride in a car made with faulty tires. You wouldn't want your son to breakfast on a cereal sourced from bacteria-riddled grains. Then you should not abet the creation, distribution, or monetization of untruthful, dangerous falsehoods to other people's sons and daughters. And you should stop it now. As I said earlier, Few of you bear responsibility before the fact. By definition, it's impossible to anticipate unanticipated consequences. But all of us bear responsibility to our community once a potential or actual crisis, like fake news, is identified. A few weeks ago, on January 4th, I mentioned before, I celebrated my 10th anniversary as CEO of the IAB. I premised my leadership on a simple piece of advice I got from Tim Armstrong when he was the sales leader at Google and who was helping to recruit me for this job. Focus on thought leadership, Tim told me a decade ago, because thought leadership is the magnet that will get people into the room. And once you've got them in the room, you can coalesce them into doing the right things for the industry. It's the best leadership advice I ever got. We forged partnerships with our sister trade organizations, the 4As and the ANA, to fight together on behalf of transparent metrics, consumer privacy, self-regulation, and better advertising. More recently, we at the IAB put together a coalition of almost a dozen associations to work together to build a more robust infrastructure for cross-screen digital video ad delivery. We're going to create more rooms to bring in more people so we can amalgamate an even larger coalition to solve some of our most persistent problems. Former CBS News President Andrew Hayward, whom you heard last night, one of the most lauded executives in modern television journalism, will be working with IAB to bring together journalism leaders and other content leaders into the kind of open industry dialogues we need to address the crisis of fake news. But here you are now in this room. So to you, I want to offer, as I promised, some small principles that might guide you to beneficial actions. Here are two. First, and you heard it from Mark Pritchard last night, comply with industry standards. This every man, every woman, every company for itself nonsense that has increasingly dominated our digital media business relationships is the purest example I have ever seen of the tragedy of the commons. As Mark said last night, it has placed a creativity tax, even an ROI tax, on everything we as an industry do. It sucks up staff time and our customers' money into endless disputes over existential theories, methodologies, even observable facts. Worse, much worse, non-compliance with industry standards has put us on the slippery slope to relativism that leads directly to fake news, industry mistrust, and social degradation. You don't like the standards? You think there can be better standards? That's great. Join the IAB, join the IAB Tech Lab, join the 4As, join the ANA, join the MRC, and campaign for better standards. But opt out of that, and you are opting out of transparency, trust, and truth. The second principle, get yourself out of the fake anything business. This is not difficult. I don't care what your company does. Just ask your finance department. And if you're a small startup, just ask your accountant to create a list of all your customer payables. Then commission a team to review the list to determine who your customers actually are and what they do for a living. If they are engaged in child porn or distributing stolen movies or generating neo-Nazi propaganda or anything else you wouldn't want your parents, spouses, neighbors, or children to know about, then stop doing business with them. And once you've reviewed and you've cleared your customers, do the same thing with your suppliers. This is not a vain exercise. This is a real thing. 3 weeks ago, I received an email from a concerned citizen who asked if I was aware of the cyber terrorism being visited on the Jewish community of Whitefish, Montana. I was aware because I'd already read news reports. The website dailystormer.com, named after the most famous Hitler Nazi Party newspaper in Germany. The website dailystormer.com had announced plans for a neo-Nazi march through the town of Whitefish on Martin Luther King Day. The founder of the site declared, and I quote, Jews have operated with impunity for decades, destroying the lives of anyone who dared question their international criminal cartel. Those days are finished. What did this have to do with the IAB? The concerned citizen who wrote me, who asked that I keep his name private because he has been subject to personal harassment, contacted me because he discovered, by clicking around, that an ad network was involved in serving ads to the Daily Stormer's website. He was unable to get anybody in the company to return his calls, but he saw on their site, they displayed proudly that they were an IAB member. So he was contacting me for help in getting them to stop financing a Nazi propaganda hate site. The ads from the IAB member company, the network, did come down, not through my intervention. Apparently, it was through the intervention of another partner the concerned citizen contacted. And that's good news. But it also proves my point. It shows that any company sitting in this room has the ability to proactively police itself and to actively banish fakery, fraudulence, criminality, and hatred from your midst. And it is your obligation to do so. Don't tell me that it's difficult. Don't tell me that it will take a lot of time. Don't tell me that it's too complex to resolve quickly. In a multi-dimensional industry that can invest untold billions in driverless cars, Mars missions, Super Bowl ads, next season's primetime lineup, and the acquisition of some new hot programmatic startup, surely we can fix fake news first. And once we've done that, let's rise to Mark Pritchard's challenge. Let's fix once and for all ad fraud, opaque metrics, and the other ills that sully our industry and diminish our ability to make good on the promise of the digital revolution. Think what that promise is. That promise is liberation from ignorance. That promise is the opportunity to create great art and distribute it widely. That promise is to build businesses that endure because they can reach the right people at the right time with the right messages about the right products and the right services. So let's repair our town square. Let's mend our commons before we invest in moonshots. In fact, let us make fixing the digital marketing media supply chain our moonshot. As I said at the beginning, I am proud of IAB members' willingness to band together, to find common cause and improve our industry. From the Digital Advertising Alliance to Making Measurement Make Sense, from TAG to the Coalition for Better Advertising, digital media and technology companies have continually shown their willingness to build a better ecosystem. But now I am asking you to reach higher, and I'm asking you to reach deeper into your own better nature. The values that we hold dear, diversity, freedom of speech and religion, freedom of enterprise, are under assault. And digital marketing, advertising, media, and technology companies bear some measure of responsibility. The route from self-interested standards to fraudulent ads, to blind-eyed negligence, to the financing of criminal activities, to support for hatred is too clear and it is too direct. What we say here and what we do here makes a difference. Please leave this conference with one understanding. You have the power to move fast and fix things. You have the power to rebuild our credibility. You have the power to rebuild our trust. Thank you very much for being here.